السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. Welcome to our Family and Faith Live monthly edition, alhamdulillah. So inshallah, today's edition is all about how you can help your children achieve excellence. Let me just sort this out. What's up? Can you confirm you're muted on your Instagram? Brilliant. Okay, perfect. Alhamdulillah. So inshallah, we're going to get straight into it. As always, your questions are welcome. You can ask questions via the comments on YouTube and also Instagram. For those of you who have joined via Instagram, you can ask questions, you can comment. And inshallah, we're going to start off with the questions that have come in from beforehand, inshallah. So the first question we have, Assalamu alaikum. What are your thoughts on homeschooling, and have you seen the pros and cons firsthand? So thoughts on homeschooling, and have you seen the pros and cons firsthand? Let me just repeat that question, I think, for the Instagram viewers. The question was, what are your thoughts on homeschooling, and have you seen the pros and cons firsthand?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, everyone.
So I think you may still be muted.
Is that better?
Yeah, perfect.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, everyone. Hope everyone's well. Getting to the end of holidays for most of the people, mashallah. Back into routine soon. But yeah, I mean, in terms of regarding the question, homeschooling. Yeah, I mean, my children are homeschooled, I would say, but it just depends on what kind of setup you have for homeschooling. Whenever people ask me this question, I always tell people, with homeschooling, it just depends on the parents. If one or both of the parents have some sort of experience or some sort of background in teaching, then that obviously helps. If they don't have that, but they are quite up to date in regards to the qualifications that are needed and staying up to date with all of the requirements and things, then again, it's very possible to do good homeschooling. And there have been many children who have excelled, very much excelled when it comes to homeschooling, when one of the parents at least has a proper plan. Otherwise, what you have to do, if you want to do homeschooling just because you want to safeguard your children from the bad influence that there may be in certain schools, then you have to supplement that with something like, for example, tuitioning or something. There has to be some sort of supplementing there. Otherwise, the children do fall behind quite a bit. And then it's hard to fill in plug in the gaps when there are certain gaps that are remaining. Like, for example, I was just talking to a friend of mine whose son developed speaking and writing skills quite late, probably like 2 years later than everybody else of his age. And just a few weeks ago, they just received their GCSE results, and everything, mashallah, he got very good results in 8s and so on. When it came to anything to do with writing, like English, history, anything to do with actual, having to write certain pieces, essays and things, he did quite poorly. So he was just saying that this is the result of, meaning his analysis of that was that this was the result of 2 years he started, later than everybody else. Not to say that you can't make up the gaps, of course you can, but then there needs to be some effort, quite a bit of effort put in to try to do that. So all in all, homeschooling, you're going to have to make your mind up in terms of where your priorities are. Simply, I just tell people, where is your priority? If your priority is protecting the child from certain environment, that's my number one priority, then you have to sacrifice a little bit of certain other things, perhaps. So you have to work out where your priorities are. If your priority is that no, the child should get the best education, then you may have to look somewhere. You can always get good places to go, but then there's obviously certain influences which we will not be able to prevent. So it's just a matter of working out what's best, and sometimes it's a bit of a trial and error thing to see, because not all children are the same. Not everyone will be influenced in a negative way. Sometimes some children need that bit of company, friends and everything else because obviously with children that are homeschooled, then there is that issue of them not being able to socialize and liaise with people, because they don't have people skills. They've not grown up with other children, things like that. So you have to balance it out, and you have to work out what is the best for this particular child of yours. What works for one child of yours may not work for the other second child of yours or the third child of yours. You have to work it all out. But I think keeping the options open is the best thing.
So just to add on to also Mufti Saab said, so when it comes to homeschooling also, right, sometimes the parents themselves can teach the child. So especially when it's primary school subjects, and they're quite simple, or if you're competent in certain subjects, even going into secondary school, you can teach the child. But in many other cases, especially getting higher, maybe talking about GCSE levels in particular, when it comes to maybe science, English, things like this, it can be quite challenging. And so you do get, especially now, organizations which offer online lessons, essentially. So there will be qualified teachers, and obviously this comes with an associated cost, but there will be qualified teachers, and they will teach your children the lessons that you want them to teach. Now, the one I've heard of recently is called Ilmspire. So Ilmspire is one I've heard of recently. I can't, vouch for them in any way. If you are interested, it's probably worthwhile doing your own research. But from what I've seen of their promotions and things like this is what they have. They have qualified teachers, competent teachers, and they are able to cover the syllabus quite quickly. For those of you who've gone to school, you'll know that sometimes in school, the same subjects are repeated over and over again. And sometimes because you're in a certain class or whatever else, you're held to that class's standard. But if your child is quite competent, intelligent perhaps, then they can move quite quickly and cover a lot more than would be covered for their same age group at school as well, right? So it can work. It can work both ways. I mean, there's a question just come in regarding this. That a sister, she says, I am planning to homeschool my 9-year-old this year. What is the best approach? He has picked up a lot of bad qualities, unfortunately, from school. So I think you kind of mentioned which one, the pros and cons. But if they are going to do it, how do they maximize it?
So in terms of maximizing from it, I think there's also networks. There's also groups and networks you can join, WhatsApp groups, as well as just online through different social media platforms of homeschooling parents. So parents that do homeschooling.
I think you might be muted.
Can you not hear me? It's unmuted. Can you hear me now?
So try unmute yourself on Instagram.
It's unmuted. Can you hear me now? YouTube can hear, but Instagram cannot. Can Instagram hear?
So it might be worthwhile if you just leave the Instagram and I'll send you an invite again.
Okay.
Just going to invite Mufti Sab again.
Can you hear me? So sorry, just maximizing the homeschooling for the for your children. I would say there's a network of parents on WhatsApp as well as on different social media platforms, and if you get into that group, into those networks, and you will have a lot of experienced parents who have done it for many of their children, and they'll be able to guide much better in terms of practicals and what's best practice and things like that. So because I knew a friend of mine that actually did homeschooling, and he told me that there's a whole network of parents and all across the country, in fact, and you learn off each other and things like this. So there's a lot of guidance there for homeschooling. So I would say join those kind of groups and get in touch with those kind of groups, and that's probably the best way to be able to maximize. In terms of the bad influence, the bad qualities that they've already picked up, inshallah, once those influences are now stopped and the good influences continue to influence them, the good things, good qualities that you are trying to instill in them, then inshallah slowly it will iron itself out, really.
And just adding to what Mufti Saab has mentioned as well, is that make sure you create a balanced timetable for the day. So obviously you have your academic subjects, but make sure they have time perhaps to socialize, for exercise, and you will see that they will actually be able to move at perhaps even a faster pace than they are moving at school. So don't just think, oh, I have to follow, the school curriculum, the school syllabus. If you see they're strong somewhere, then follow that, take that strength, and let them really excel in that field. Now, just kind of for inspiration, there was somebody I came across many years ago by the name of Asim Qureshi, and he had 3 children who were going to school, and they were in their class. They were average children. And this is himself saying. And he started to homeschool them. Mashallah, both him and his wife are very well. I think they're both Oxford educated. So they're both, very well educated. So they started to homeschool their children. And most of their children actually ended up doing their GCSEs in like year 8s and year 9s and doing really well, right? So this just goes to show that if you can figure out the strengths of your child and work on them, inshallah, then this can be a great success. Also, I mean, I know you've said you've already decided to homeschool, but sometimes if you feel like maybe I'm going to struggle with homeschooling, or you try it and it doesn't work, there are other Islamic schools out there where inshallah, your child won't be exposed to those same negative influences. So that is an option as well. Yeah. Okay. So sisters, what age group is this session for? So this session is open. It's not limited to an age group. The theme of this session is helping your child achieve excellence. So we've been discussing questions in that regard, but it's open to any age range, of course, and all types of questions pertinent to family and faith. Yeah. Okay. The next question that we had come in from before was, Assalamu alaikum muftis. Please advise young adults how to stop addiction. And then it says in brackets, masturbation. I have watched your Breaking the Shackles and I sometimes do brace, but still I succumb. Please give practical steps. Jazakallah. Okay, so I mean, what you have to understand is in that workshop that we did, brace was just one step out of 8 steps. If you just use one step, but you miss 7 other steps, right? The chances are you're going to slip up. So, I mean, just to quickly recap, some of the key steps were, firstly, always turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Because you can never do this alone. With addictions, they're very, very hard to overcome on your own. You need support. And of course, the first place of support is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? The second aspect we said, remember, is always keeping in mind, at the front of your mind, all the negative consequences. So this is for any addiction, whether it be smoking, gambling, gaming, they all come with a whole load of negative consequences. Keeping those at the forefront of your mind and perhaps even reading them daily so you know exactly what they are. The reason that addiction is such a challenge and so difficult to overcome, whatever type it may be, right? Whether it's masturbation or any type of addiction, is because of the way it affects the brain. The brain is rewired such that in that moment of temptation, in that moment of desire, you can no longer think rationally. Your brain instead thinks through its impulses, its instinct, its desire. So when you try to rationalize with the brain at that moment, it doesn't work, right? So that's why your best bet is to prepare yourself from before by closing all avenues that lead up to that addiction. So in the question you've asked, let's say a person is addicted to masturbation. Now they know that one of the temptations that leads me to this is, for example, let's say when I walk down the street or if I go to the mall and I don't control my gaze, or if I have my phone with me in my bedroom at night, there'll be different things. So understand what these are and block all avenues, because if you're constantly tempted, no matter how strong your willpower is, eventually you're going to fail. And that's why in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam himself says that وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ, that I don't absolve myself, that I know my nafs, and he's a prophet of Allah. He says the nafs constantly commands to bad. So don't give your nafs that chance where you're constantly giving it opportunities, because eventually you're going to slip up, right? So close all those avenues, and you have to always replace bad habits with good habits. So if you know you have a lot of free time that's being wasted, right? Then you need to find good activities, good habits, good people to engage with, to spend time with, to boost yourself spiritually. Okay, I mean, these are just some things. There are so many other things you can be doing, but like I said, brace on its own is not enough. That's just one part of the entire puzzle. That's just one piece. You've got to do everything else alongside it, and you've got to keep trying. It may be that one time you fail, 2 times you fail, but eventually, if you keep trying, you will succeed. And one place where a lot of addicts go wrong is they think just one more time. So a lot of research, new research now says that if you want to change your habit, you have to actually change your way of thinking. Because if the way of thinking is the same, the thinking pattern is the same, the end result, the end action is going to be the same. So you've got to change the way of thinking. So for example, one way of thinking is that, well, one more time is no more harm. How's one more time going to harm me? I'll stop tomorrow. I'll stop the day after, right? But you have to literally sit down and think, what are all the lies I say to myself? Like maybe, one more time is not that bad. Or I'll do tawbah afterwards, for example. Or, whatever lies that people say for different types of addictions. And sit down and write down the actual truth. So for example, you might write down, one more time is not going to harm me, but actually it will, because one more time means one more day added, and that means another day, and I'm just stuck in that cycle. So there is a lot of harm, right? Or when it says, it's only a small sin, I'll do tawbah. What if I was to die in that moment? What if I didn't get a chance for tawbah? What if it led to my iman being lost? So you've got to write these things down and constantly reflect over them to break these patterns of thinking. Okay, so these are some things, inshallah. Inshallah, we are also working on a number of resources in this regard as well. So hopefully over the next few months and in the future, we will be, inshallah, sharing further things. But hopefully for now that satisfies. Is there anything, Mufti Sahib, you'd like to add in this regard? Okay, so all right. So another question now. How do we make sure the kids are around good influences? How do we make sure the kids are around good influences?
So in regards to influences of kids, obviously it depends on the age. Certain ages you'll be able to control certain things. When it gets to a certain age, you will not be able to control certain things that I'm talking about now. So the younger they are, the easier it is for you to be able to put them in a certain environment. So that means the majority of the day goes in school. Okay, majority of them will be spending at least 6 hours in school. That's like a large chunk of their time going in school. So picking the right school, which has a right good environment around them, because that will be a major influence. Likewise, if they're going to a madrasa in the evening, then picking the right madrasa, which has good, role models for them to look up to certain teachers. The ethos in that madrasa is good. If they're in an environment which they like to be in, then they will look up to those people. They will look up to those people and they will want to be like them. So you have to put them in that kind of environment. And if you've done them to from a young age, then largely your children will grow up to become good, well influenced, inshallah. So that's in terms of influence, because majority of their time will go in these two main activities, main thing. Obviously, having said that, the environment at home has to be a positive influence on them as well. It can't be that they're learning things in madrasa or in school, even good things, we put them in, but the environment at home is no good. So the home environment has to also be good, conducive to what we're trying to achieve here. Then, as they grow older, exposing them to those things which you want them to go ahead and do. For example, doing voluntary work for a local charity, going into a charity. There's many charities nowadays, mashallah. So you go into you go into their shop, for example, and you help them. Check through, sort out their clothes that they've got for the clothing bank donation, things like that, or a local food bank, helping out there, or a local masjid helping out on in certain times, with whatever, depending on the age group, voluntarily doing things, even to the extent of whatever it may be that they can do it according to their age group, according to their age range. So giving them that exposure, and then obviously other things like taking them for speeches. If there's a certain speech going on in a certain masjid, there's a bayan happening, taking them for that. If you're into tabligh, then taking on that, and taking them with you, depending on their age, like this. So you create this kind of influence, and when you create these kind of opportunities for them to become positively influenced, then inshallah, hopefully you will see that all of this will create a good influence on them.
And also just adding on to what Mufti Sahib has said as well, is just keeping an eye out on who their friends are as well. And if you notice that they have certain bad friends who are influencing them, then slowly trying to distance those friends, right? To give our own example, I remember many years ago when my youngest brother, maybe 12 years younger than me, when he first started going school, literally, and this was nursery and primary school, and he would come back home and he would say certain swear words. And we think we don't swear in our house. Where are these words coming from? And when we went to school, we realized there was a boy who was Eastern European, and he would say these words. And obviously, you, as a child, you pick it up. So you have to be aware that, okay, if there are certain negatives that you're noticing, where is that coming from? And then closing those doors as well, right? So that's quite important. Okay, brilliant. The next question, how do you help your child from primary school who's now moving into a high school environment? How do you help them to embrace that environment, especially because if they find it quite overwhelming because they're quiet or they're a shy child? So what can you do to help them settle in?
Right. So, firstly, having a discussion with them, talking to them, preparing them mentally for it, that change, obviously, that will help them. Tell them that, look, at the beginning, everyone's the same. Everyone's, this is how it is. You just be yourself, and just making them feel confident to be there. It's not something too overwhelming, inshallah. The more we make it a thing, the more it'll become a thing. Everyone's there on the same page. All the students in their class will be the same, and the teachers also obviously know that this is a new year, new year 7 group. So they will also treat them in that way. So it's not something which should be made to feel as though it's overwhelming too much. They should be made a bit more confident, and given the confidence that don't worry about it, you'll be okay. And then when they do come back after their first day, just talk to them. How's your day? How did it go? Oh, that was quite good. Then, just giving that confidence to them that things actually do go well. And then every so often, maybe a week, just after a week or so, just having a little chat with them to see how they're doing and how they're going. And if something they're struggling with, then help them. If it means that you have to email the school or go into the school and talk to the tutor or somebody, then do that for them. And inshallah, hopefully things will become a bit more better for them. And besides that, obviously, we also have an event coming up on Sunday, which if you obviously join and stay tuned to, you'll learn much more from a actual school teacher who will actually be able to give much more advice on that particular matter as well, inshallah.
So exactly as Mufti Sab said, I mean, it's a completely free event, and it's this coming Sunday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. If you go on our WhatsApp channel, you will find the details there. And also, if you go on our website as well, the mff.co.uk, and click on live workshops, you will see it there as well, inshallah. Okay, so it's delivered by a teacher going through the different challenges that children face throughout high school. One of which is when you enter high school, it can be quite overwhelming. And so how you can deal with that challenge, inshallah. Yeah, so more details there. Next question. How do you have an organized routine? How do you have an organized routine? Now we actually have a entire workshop, again, coming up very, very soon, middle of September, in which we discuss how do you actually create a home that is organized, that is peaceful, that is calm, that is spiritual, and all these beautiful traits we want. So again, if you go to WhatsApp channel or also again the website, you will find details of the workshop, and we urge you to sign up, inshallah. But inshallah, I'll pass it to Mufti Sab, who can shed some light as well.
Right. I mean, obviously, having an organized routine means having a plan, a daily or weekly, weekend different plan, perhaps a weekday different plan. So having a schedule, written up schedule, not just in the head. Obviously, it does help for it to be written up. So if it's something that is a household thing, like for example, food time, breakfast time, dinner time, or whatever other things that are to do with the family, then you can even write it down as like a slight timetable type thing. Just write it down and stick it on the fridge where everyone can see. And when somebody is, for example, let's say there's less food now, everyone's eaten food, and one person turns up and they're like, where's the food? There's no food. Just point to the fridge and say, look at the time, right? That's the time when the food time is. That's the time you're meant to turn up. So then what happens is, through these kind of ways, people realize that we have to stick to this kind of organized routine. There's routine here, not just everything all over the place. So if we have these kind of things written up roughly, then obviously knowing that this is a routine that we're trying to do, but there has to be some slack. There has to be, sometimes if you can understand that something happened here, we had to do this at this particular time. So this kind of, but generally speaking, there's a general routine throughout the whole of the weekdays or weekends, and writing it down will obviously create some sort of organized routine. For one's own self, you can have much more detail in terms of what you aim to achieve and things like this. So you have like a weekly aims that, oh, I want to do this week, or I have to get my car serviced this week, I have to get the MOT done. You know, like you have certain weekly tasks that you would give to yourself. Or I have to do a big, I have to fix this particular thing. You put it into your schedule so you can see at the end of the week whether you've completed those tasks, tick them off, whatever you've completed. And nowadays you even get very good apps to track all of this, and it'll even ask you, prompt you, have you done this? So you just download these kind of apps to help you to be able to achieve this kind of better routine and organization. So yeah, these kind of things inshallah will help. And like Muhammad mentioned already, inshallah there is much more detail on this, and obviously workshop will give you practicals for you to take away with yourselves to actually implement those particular good skills that you're going to pick up in the workshop, for you to inshallah have a better routine.
Also, I mean, Mufti mentioned about, calendars and things like that. So, for example, my own self, I use Google Calendar. So if you go to Google Calendar, it's on the iPhone. There's an app for it. You can also get it online as well. Just type in Google Calendar, you'll see it, and you can actually time block. And what that means is you can set in time. So, okay, I at this time to this time, I'm going to be teaching, for example. At this time to this time, I'm going to be doing X or Y, right? And so, there was actually a study done, I think it was by Harvard University, where they ranked different time management techniques, the top 100. And I think you can find it online. If you just type in top 100 time management techniques, you'll find it there. And at number 1, they found the most effective time management technique is time blocking, which is literally, so you're struggling to spend time, let's say, with your spouse, you just allocate it in your timetable. Okay, at this time, 9 to 9:30 every night, that's time for my spouse, right? And so when you time block like that, it's so much time we waste, we don't realize, because we don't account for our time. When you do this, it helps you account for it as well, and it'll help you create a very nice routine. Yeah, so that's another thing. And he also mentioned another very important point about, especially when you're new to that routine, having some level of flexibility built within it. Now, let me just give an example here. So there's a household I know, which is, we have a very nice routine. And I was speaking to the eldest lady in the household, mashallah, who's been, managing the household of like 30 plus people very successfully. And so, right? But what we do, so if you come for breakfast on that time, you get breakfast served to you. If you miss it, however, it's not like you don't get breakfast, but it just means that, okay, we've got the egg, we've made the mixture for you, it's there, it's ready, but you're going to have to come and cook it yourself. Put it in the pan and make it yourself. Now, what that means is the person who comes late is thinking, oh, if I came on time, if I came on time, I'd get egg ready served. If I come a bit late, it's not like I'm going hungry. I'm not getting punished in that sense. But there's still an incentive to come on time, right? So, okay. Do you have a curriculum for homeschoolers? No, look, so we don't provide homeschooling, nor do we have a curriculum. Mufti Sahib was just explaining in terms of guidance as to how you could make your homeschooling successful. And connected to this, there's a next question. Is there a community for homeschoolers that one can connect with? That there is one, and I'm sure they would probably have a curriculum and all these resources. So inshallah, we will share the details of this curriculum on the MFF WhatsApp channel. So if you join the MFF WhatsApp channel, we will share the details of that curriculum on that channel, inshallah. Details there. Okay, next question. How to create a good bond with the husband's children to make sure trust and respect are built between each other.
So I presume this is the husband's children, so like stepchildren, yeah? So I mean, you have to allow time. That's one thing. Don't force things. I always deal with parents with that who have this, or say sisters, generally speaking, and obviously brothers as well. Most of the times, the sisters that have this kind of concern how to build this kind of a relationship, but don't force it. Don't expect a miracle from day one. It will take a bit of time for the child to adjust, and obviously, from the child's perspective, the child's going through this kind of understanding that is this person placing my my actual mother or my actual father, so they're obviously going through that. So they will have naturally sometimes an aversion to building a relationship, but you just have to allow that natural self of yours. Yeah, you create that kind of bond with them in a good way by being there for them, doing simple tasks for them that you would do with anybody else that you would want to do, like just playing with them, perhaps, being there whenever they need in different difficulties and in times, and then just helping them here and there. And in doing these kind of things, obviously the bond will create, but it will take time, like I'm saying. So allow that time for them to naturally gain a liking for yourself, and inshallah, hopefully, we'll see that they will come out and they will inshallah learn to respect and create a bond with yourself.
Also, if the children, your husband's children, are slightly older, then sometimes there are some additional challenges. So one additional challenge sometimes could be that because the child has more understanding, they're older, and they already have a mother who they know they're well bonded with, perhaps they may not want you to replace their mother. So even when you're dealing with that child, you're interacting with that child, you should just be careful not to make it feel like you're replacing that child's mother, especially if the child has those kind of sentiments and feelings in their mind, right? So that's one thing. And secondly, if you have children of your own, just being extremely careful that whatever you do, it should never come across that you're showing favoritism to your own children over them, right? Because especially in those kind of cases, the children are already vulnerable, they already feel hurt, and they can easily read into these things that, oh, she's looking after her children, look what she does for them, she doesn't do these things for me, she doesn't really care for me, she loves them more, and that can create hurt, and that can create distance. So trying your best, and sometimes even going for it, and if you keep up that, inshallah, naturally that love will grow as well. Okay, next question. What is the most effective method to make children memorize the Quran at home? What's the most effective method to make children memorize Quran at home?
So there are various methods, in fact, of making children memorize the Quran. You have to find, and I always say this, you have to find the best that suits your child. Obviously, waking them up early in the morning, these are just good practices, generally speaking. Waking up early morning and with a fresh mind, when they've slept early, they're able to spend a bit of time learning and doing their sabak bara, their door. These kind of things help a lot. Obviously, listening to the Quran, I've seen for many children, helps a lot, because when they listen, they're able to pick up and memorize that particular section very well, even if they don't memorize it by listening. But when it comes to actual memorization for that particular section that they've listened to quite a bit, it becomes much more easier for them. So obviously many children do pick up the actual thing and they're able to learn it even just by listening. So this is important, and what's quite important is making sure there's consistency, there's a regular routine. If you just do ad hoc, like a few days and then give them a break of a few days, and then a few days and then give them a break of a few days, what I've seen generally, we speak with children, is hard for them to get back into routine there, especially if you give them a bit of a break. To make them sit back and start to learn again is like starting the whole story all over again. So, and then plus you have with hifz, obviously with the memorization of Quran, you have a lot of times they forget if you take quite a bit of a break or something. So having a good routine and finding a routine which works for your child, that is obviously the best thing to do. And a lot of repetition, especially with what they've learned, and getting them to recite whatever they've learned in their salah, and asking them after salah, before salah, reminding them, oh yeah, remember, pray this in your salah. Okay, and they're making sure they pray. If it's obviously males, boys that you're, then they're praying that in their sunnahs, in their witr. So they're praying all of this in their salah, and then you ask them, you quiz them afterwards, oh, what did you read, or how much did you read? Did you do page per salah, like this? So getting them to do this in their salah, whatever they're learning that day and whatever it is, and then it would create a routine like this. This would all help in doing this. And obviously, just one other good practice that one friend of mine has is that they will wake up early, and before breakfast they'll make sure that the child has read a certain amount, a certain portion. So they will make sure that, okay, this is how much you have to have read, depending on the children. Okay, it depends on how much the children can pick up and how much the child can do. So you get them to read that much, and then they have breakfast after that. So the breakfast serves as a purpose of break as well, and also like it's like the first thing we do is we have to recite Quran. So this kind of a good kind of environment being created at home. So with these different practices, inshallah, hopefully it become easier. But remember, obviously nothing's easy, especially getting your child to memorize the Quran. It's not always very easy, but it's just a sustained effort we have to carry on making. And inshallah, hopefully, even the days when they have holidays, like when they have a holiday period and you're off, or you're going away on a holiday, get them to read something. Get them to read, okay, just do 1 page today. Get them to do something. Don't give absolutely complete break. Like, okay, no reading today at all. What happens, that routine breaks, and getting them started again is very difficult. So get them to continue doing something, even if it's a shorter amount, smaller amount, and then get them, okay, we'll do 1 page today, but tomorrow we're back and we have to do what we were doing, okay? We have to go back to routine again. So you get them to say yes, and then you allow them to take that that kind of a little break kind of thing.
Very good. Just some more tips to add on to what Mufti Saab mentioned as well. So a number of years ago, I actually went to Egypt to study for a summer. And over there, I met a sheikh who had a hifz school. And students would come from all over Egypt, you know, youngsters, even adults, and they would come there and they would stay there for 3 months, 6 months, you know, and they would literally in that time memorize the entire Quran. Now, I remember when I first went and I heard that, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this can't be real, because it took me like 5 years. How are they doing it in 3 months or 6 months? You know, this must be fake. Anyhow, it did turn out to be real, right? And so I was very intrigued, and I said, how is this possible? And so, of course, the adults or the children would come and they would spend all day reciting. But one of the key things the Sheikh told me, he said, look, the key factor is concentration. And what we mean by concentration is not just concentration, you know, like your mind is concentrating. But he said, no, every single limb of yours needs to be concentrating when you're reciting. So your mind is concentrating, but so are your eyes, so are your ears, so is your heart involved, so is your entire body in that motion. Anything that distracts from that learning at that time is going to slow down the learning process. So teaching your child tips, and you can go to teachers who teach hifz. There's so many books on hifz as well, hifz guides, and reading those and picking up learning tips and sharing them with your child as well. They look, try this, try that, to kind of help them improve their ability to memorize, right? That's quite key. Also, making sure if they're sitting down to read, sit them in a place where there's no distractions, because children are very easily distracted. So sit them in a place, you know, maybe facing a white wall, for example, right? Where there's no distractions around them, there's no noise around them. And especially if there are multiple siblings, what often happens, what I've seen is there's one sibling who's reading Quran and the other ones are playing, and the one sibling who's reading, half their concentration is on the other ones who are playing, because in their mind they're thinking, oh, when do I get to play, right? So if you're having a set time, have a time where maybe they're all reading together, so that way they're all motivating each other as well. They look, we're all reading right now, and when we're all done, we all get to play, right? So having a dedicated space, having a set time, and making sure there's a good understanding of the techniques that you can use. And again, you can find these in so many books, Hifz guides. All of these will help, inshallah. Okay, next question is, should you reward your children after they've done chores? Should you reward your children after they've done chores?
Right. So generally speaking, I mean, you don't want to make a routine of rewarding them for a certain thing, especially like chores. They want to do it. They want to do it because they should do it, or because they want to do it also, or because that's the right thing to do. Not always because of the reward. Otherwise, if you get them used to doing something just for a reward, then they will always do it only when there is a reward involved. So they'll only do something if there's a reward involved. So you don't want to get them used to it, but it's always good sometimes to reward good behavior. If they've done something for a certain amount of time, and they say that, oh, you're always really good, today I'll treat you. Just randomly, you treat them to whatever, treat them to a dessert, tell them you pick, okay, or treat them to a little thing, treat them sometimes. So giving them that kind of reward spontaneously every so often is something good, definitely. I mean, you could reward them by giving them a bit of money if you wanted to. I went to Denmark and had an interesting discussion with an actual native Danish person who became a Muslim, mashallah. So he was saying that their custom it's very, very common amongst the Danish people from a young age that they would actually pay their children for the chores that they do. So whatever chores you do, you take the bin out, you do the hoover, you do the dishes, whatever it is you do, you get paid for it. But the thing is that the other side to this, you can say, is the catch here is that then they also expect the children to pay from that money to pay for things. So if we go, he goes that, then when we go for a haircut or when we go to buy our stationery for school, we have to pay for it. I have to pay for my own haircut. I have to. So then I said, oh, that's quite interesting. Why is that? So then he said that it teaches us responsibility. It teaches us that money, you get money, but you have to also spend money correctly. You have to know where you can't just blow it all on sweets. You can't just do this or that. So depending on the age. So this is one type of parenting style that actually works for them. So it depends on what you want to do, how you want to do it. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, my own experience from it is that don't generally just give them payments or something for everything, because then everything just becomes done for money. It's like I'll only do it if I get money out of it.
All right, next question. What is the best way to ensure children don't absorb the tension or negativity between the parents when an argument does take place? Because obviously, arguments taking place is a natural process that does happen at certain times. So what's the best way to ensure negativity or tension between parents doesn't affect the children?
I mean, the best way is not to have the arguments in front of the children, right? That's the ultimate best way. Okay, you have to set a rule between the two of you that no matter how angry we are, no matter what I think, just bite your lip at the time when the children are in front of you. Don't argue in front of your children. Okay, the last thing children want is to be taking sides. Okay, because then one parent pulls this way, mom did that in it, you saw in it, and then the other one will be like, yeah, your dad does this all the time, doesn't he? Yeah, and then the children are like torn between the two, and they have to kind of take sides. So you don't want put your children in that kind of a situation, or in that kind of a. It's not nice for the child to be in that place. It's not fair for the child to be in that kind of position. So ultimately, the rule should be that never argue in front of your children. But if you do, then be, big enough, have that, crush the ego enough that you're able to apologize. That I apologize for shouting at you in front of the children. If you shouted in front of the children, then you have to apologize, and then that will teach you not to do it again, because it's not easy to apologize. So you have to do it. You have to apologize in front of it. Set these rules for yourselves, and it will prevent you arguing in front of the children. I mean, if your own parents were there, and you have some degree of respect and awe regarding, for your children, for your own parents, you wouldn't have argued. That's because there's somebody that's to question you that's there, right? Or somebody to tell you. But if your children are there, just because there's no questionability, you think that we can argue in front of our children. We shouldn't be doing it. So definitely, that's the ultimate way to prevent negativity or coming onto the children. And if it does happen, and this is a big if, because we're saying firstly it shouldn't happen, but if it does ever happen, then we must make sure we do positive in front of the children. Like, for example, let's say the children see you hugging, or the children see you holding hands, or your children see you giving a morsel to your spouse, or your children see you doing good things, smiling at each other, the children see you smiling at one another, something like this, sitting next to each other, just something like this, putting your arm around each other, on the shoulder, doing positive things like this as well. So the children also see, they're okay. They've made up now. They're all right. All right. And this shouldn't be a common occurrence as well. Okay. If it's happening more often than not, then you need to do something about it. If it means you need to get some bit of counseling, couples counseling for it, to eradicate these kind of arguments that are happening in front of children, then do that as well. Okay. Because somebody, inshallah, will be able to help you to prevent these kind of arguments happening, to tackle the root causes of these arguments, and inshallah once and for all they're tackled, and it won't inshallah flare up anything further.
Okay, so the next question says, is it okay for a child not to be academic? So I mean obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created all children differently, right? Even if you look within your own children, if you have more than one, you will see that some are naturally academic, some might be naturally athletic, some might be naturally explorers. Every child is different. So it's not a question of is it okay or not. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them, right? And there are many of us who are not academics, but you will see that just because a person is not academic, it does not mean they're going to be a failure in life, as long as they understand what their strengths are and they are able to work to those strengths, right? I personally know many people who are not academic, but they have strengths in business, for example, and they're doing very, very well, right? So it's just about really understanding what your child's strengths are. And I mean, there's a very, very nice quote, which apparently used to be hung up in Ottoman schools, which said that in our schools, we don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Right? In our schools, we don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, meaning a fish is good for swimming in water, not for climbing a tree. So if your child has certain talents, right, and they may not be academic, then work on those talents, nurture those talents, make them their strength. Like give you a practical example. There is, again, from one of our teachers, his child is not so academic, but he's very good hands-on. And so he got him quite early on in experience with plumbing and electric works and things like this. That's foresight, understanding that this is what my child is good at. And it's quite funny, because if you ask any parent, would you rather your child be a doctor or like a plumber or electrician, right? Every parent would say, I'd rather my child be a doctor. But funnily enough, because of AI today, doctors' jobs are more at risk than a plumber or electrician. And the doctors are wishing maybe we should have become plumbers and electricians, right? So never look down and understand these are my child's strengths, and I need to make the best of this, right? So I think that's what I would say. Anything to add, Mufsal?
No, that's perfect, mashallah.
Okay, so the next question, I think will, so does MFF do marriage counseling? Yes, we do. If you go on our website, themff.co.uk, click on counseling, you'll see all the details there. So themff.co.uk, all the details are there. Is co-parenting going to be discussed in our workshop? So the Home of Heaven workshop is dealing with specific traits that are found in many homes. But we will have Q&A at the end, inshallah. So if you have questions relating to co-parenting, we can address those there, inshallah. Last question, and we'll end here because it is Isha Salah time in just a few minutes. What does it mean to be a success as a parent? So what does it mean to be a successful parent?
Yeah, ultimately, if obviously your children understand Allah, they practice the deen, and they're okay in life, they are heading the right way, then inshallah, hopefully that in itself is success. Obviously, in a general way, that's what we're talking about. If you look at it from specifics, then it depends on what it is that you wanted for your child. If it is that you wanted your child to have, you know, a certain amount of wealth or certain kind of a job, certain qualification, then yeah, that's success for you, isn't it? For you, what it is that you regarded success to be for your child. But yeah, ultimately, for us, obviously, as Muslims, understanding in terms of obviously making sure that they recognize the deen, they practice the deen, and you know, they are set in life in terms of focus should be on the akhirah as well. So inshallah, hopefully this kind of adds to that success.
So I think that's everything. Jazakallah khair. And as Mufti Saab alluded to, success is success of the akhirah most importantly. And that's why you have this dua to success, which is, oh Allah, God, as children, spouses and children, who will be the coolness of our eyes and leaders of the muttaqeen. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. This is dua, inshallah. Read this dua regularly. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of our children and us as well successful in dunya wal akhirah. Until next time, jazakumullah khairah for your questions, for your interaction. And please do stay tuned with all the work we're doing and sign up to the upcoming workshops. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.